So before we started our chat, you mentioned to me that introspective or quiet or slow music really resonates with your
Yeah.
personality. How do you see that connection showing up in your music?
Um, I'd say for sure the sort of music I write is music that requires certain attention and certain mindset from whoever's listening. And I think that's something I find important in the kind of music I listen to as well. Like there's very different types of listening, very different types of music. But one of the things I enjoy the most, and this again came as a kind of later discovery in life, is that idea of fighting back maybe the need for complexity or the need
Yeah.
for many things happening or the need for something that's accelerating or catchy or rapid or like all these things, especially in the world we live in today, that I feel is so hectic. And we're used to like things happening quickly and things catching attention very quickly in uh low span attention culture, you know, that I find such comfort and such joy in the opposite. And loads of kind of my big heroes in music would be probably along those lines. Like I love the music of Arvo Pärt, for example. He was a really important composer for me. And I feel loads of the music that surrounds me and that I decided I wanted to write look for that space of introspection, for that space of looking into something rather than, you know, making or the speed and the that sort of thing. So that becomes almost something, as you were saying earlier, almost philosophical in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
That idea of finding introspection and breath in music and space and time and consciousness of time and space, I guess, which is maybe unusual nowadays in kind of everyday life.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I want to be careful here because I feel like we could start talking for hours about this.
Yeah.
That's how strongly I feel about what you're describing, and in my own work and in the music that I experience. And I'll go as far to say as I feel I feel annoyed sometimes with some of the like more popular contemporary composition pieces, contemporary classical pieces,
Yeah,
and that
okay.
I find myself listening. It does. I mean, it's either like student pieces that are trying to emulate like what's trendy, or
Mm.
like pieces by established composers that follow these trends that are like I get to the end of the piece and I realize like there's never been like a space in it. It's just like a wall of sound.
That's it. Or just like this showcase of virtuosity, either
Yeah,
by the performer or by the composer, of like, look how complex I can make my rhythms and my harmony. And like,
exactly.
like there's loads of that.
Yeah, and so I'm with you. I feel like maybe in response to that, or a lot of times it even I don't know why it feels this way, but in rebellion to that, and in rebellion to like I'm gesturing everywhere, like all around us.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I feel so compelled to move in the opposite direction. And you follow me on social media, you've probably seen me exploring new pieces that are doing exactly what you're describing as well. Like in the last piece I finished, I go as far as to the very end of the piece. I attach the pacing of the music to like deep inhales and exhales. Like there's no tempo marking. It's just dynamic markings, crescendo, decrescendo that follows like a breath in and a breath out. And I've been working with a pianist on like getting that right. And I'm like, does this make sense? Does this work? And she's like, I love it. It's like a great way to end the piece. But yeah, I find like I'm finding that I'm digging deeper into this kind of introspective space. Just because like it's getting like the opposite's getting worse out there.
Definitely. And
you know?
like if as if it wasn't enough with like real life stuff, we don't need I don't think we need it in music as well, It's such a heavy, stressful world to live in, so full of information. So I don't know. Yeah, that sounds beautiful. I'm looking forward to hearing that one.
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely be sharing it,
Yeah.
but Yeah, I think that's why I do appreciate your music so much, and then, any piece where I feel like the composer creates like a space, just like an environment to just kinda sit
Mm,
in for a minute where it's like subtle stuff, it's not anything in your face. I just love that music. So,
yeah.
totally with you, and before I keep going, I'll move on.
Yeah, we
Um,
could, yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
I guess, is it fair to say that you would describe yourself as, like, an introvert based on,
Oh, yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's interesting because, again, I would describe myself as an introvert, but here we are, we're having, like, a pretty dynamic conversation. Like, you don't seem very shy to me. So, I mean, do you find that your introspective nature, does that change the way you approach collaboration? I mean, what what does that look like?
Yeah, I guess I've always had a real hard time with, you know, communicating in the normal way with people. I've always been definitely very shy. I mean, I guess with the years you learn how to shake it off a bit, but it's a lot of it, it's also about who's on the other end, right? And like, do I feel at ease with whoever's on the other end, which is probably why this is very easy, right? There's loads of points in common, and like I come to a
Yeah,
very friendly space from a person that is already, like has already told me things that I find interesting or have points in common and everything, and so that's easier. And then like I don't need to. I guess it's sometimes it's easier to talk about music than to talk about yourself as well,
sure,
which
right,
is
right.
another thing. uh, I've been again. I think this country is very special that way. I've been very lucky to find collaborators that I really resonate with, not only artistically but also personally. And loads of them have become and are dear friends of mine. So I guess whenever I get into that moment of like, let's sit down and talk about music and ideas, these are people that most of the times I already feel at home with. And when it's new people, yes, there's always the starting stages. If you're approached by an ensemble or a particular person that's maybe interested in your music and how you navigate that, which is not necessarily easy. But I guess that's when you try to steer your attention to their practice. And that's often the best way to get to know them. If I'm writing for a particular performer that I'm not that familiar with personally, or it's something more, bigger, less personal, like an orchestra or, like that sort of thing, then I guess, yeah, thinking about the creative aspect of it first and trying to connect with their music, rather than with the person necessarily on first basis, it's probably the easiest.
I know how easy it is to hear a mid roll just like this one and tune out completely. I do it too. Actually, I even skip through them sometimes. But if you've been enjoying this episode and you're still with me here, this is a great moment to hit follow, leave a quick rating, or just tell a friend. All of those actions really do matter, and you can find links in the show notes, or you can visit looseleaftransmissions.com to do all of those things and more. So for your album, Sea Salt and Turpentine, I mean, what that must have been like highly collaborative if you're writing text for someone to sing
Yeah,
and working. I mean, it's the same ensemble through the whole album. I mean, what was that collaboration like?
that's really labor of love in many years. So the first link there, that I'm incredibly lucky to have is the label. Garrett and Benedict, who are the label directors, are very close friends of mine. And Garrett Scholdice would have been, from the moment I arrived into Ireland, a mentor to me. Really, he's been there from the get go, and I think he understands me very well creatively. And he was always sort of shepherding that particular project, and being very good at giving me all the good intentions and all the space to make it bloom. So that was really great from the start. In a similar vein, Michelle has been a very close friend for many years, and I've admired her work forever. She's fantastic, and I think there's many points in common in the kind of sort of music that we like and we listen to, and so it was very easy to start working with her. Before the album, I wrote a couple of pieces for her as well, so I would know her as a performer at that point. She's one of those performers that really has, in a way, a composer mind. She understands
Yeah.
very well the way composers think, and she has a very analytical mind, and like we had very very long chats about words and word setting and notation and how certain things would go, and like a whole system of how to approach it, and it was really good to have her there. And then for Ficino, I started working with them a couple years ago. They did a workshop for composers to write pieces for them. And that would have been with Michelle as well. That was a trio. It was Nathan, who is the creative director of the ensemble, and the viola player, and also harp clarinet, which also ended up in the album, right? And that particular workshop is where I started writing the There Is a Willow piece. And that sort of triggered a very dynamic relationship with the ensemble from that particular workshop and that particular piece. Then I started writing the rest of it. I talked to Nathan. I told him I'm thinking about the album, and so from the beginning I knew they were going to be the performers. And because I had that space in the workshop to kind of get to know them, know their strengths, and know how they played, what they liked, what were their fortes, then the whole thing ended up coming up together.
I love what you're talking about, like kind of, I mean, you establish a relationship with the performer or performers, and then you kind of have this idea of like how to take that further and then approaching them about that. I mean, that could be like a really scary thing. And I actually did that like last week with
Okay.
with someone who I'm like pretty close friends with, but I'm like, maybe he doesn't want me to bother him with
Which
this, or
sometimes is even more
he,
difficult because you're like, oh, I don't want to put them on the spot that they think that they have to say yes because they're my friend.
right. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, I'm like pouring over this like very short like message to text him, and then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna send it and whatever. And then of course he's like, hell yeah, let's do it, let's work together. I'm so excited. And so I don't know, was that kind of like what the experience of asking Ficino was it like that?
I'm trying to think. I don't necessarily remember how it
Yeah,
happened
that's
actually.
fair.
But I see, Nathan is it's a very driven person. Like, he is the sort of person that always has ideas for things happening, you know? And there's always been that nature in my interactions to him, that he's always open to ideas and he's always open to making things happen. And he's such a strong leader in that sense. He always has kind of ways, very clear ways of making things happen. And I think that on one side, and on the other side, I had, as I was saying from the beginning, the support from the label.
Yeah.
And so I think loads of it would have been as well Garrett and Benedict saying, like, should we approach the ensemble and how do we approach it, and kind of us as a front approaching them together, that sort of thing. But the nice thing about Dublin as well is that it's such a close knit community. Like, these are people that, yeah, that I would see in concerts, that I would talk to, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Klein, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.